January 13th, 2018, Riverside County, California. A call comes in to 911. An operator picks up the phone. Silence. Then a faint female voice. "I ran away from home. I need help." The dispatcher immediately notices something is wrong. The voice sounds strange. The words are chosen slowly with pauses. The intonation doesn't match the age at all. The caller says she will soon be 18, but her speech is like that of someone who is just learning to formulate thoughts, simple phrases, a limited vocabulary. When asked what happened, an answer follows that makes the operator freeze. "My parents are keeping my brothers and sisters in chains, in the house, right now." The dispatcher asks again. The caller repeats, "In chains, 12 people, chained to beds." She gives the address, Muir Woods Road, City of Paris. A patrol is dispatched immediately. While the car is on its way, the operator continues the conversation. It turns out the caller doesn't have her own phone. She took someone else's. She went out through a window. Now she is hiding on the street. The dispatcher asks about the others. The caller lists the ages of her brothers and sisters, from 2 years old to 29. The parents are at home. Everyone is there. 10 minutes later, the patrol is on site. A quiet street, a residential sector. The houses are far apart. At the address is an ordinary one-story building, a well-kept lawn, a playground in the yard. Nothing suspicious. The police ask the caller to approach. A few seconds later, a girl appears from around the corner. What the officers see makes them exchange looks. Emaciation, skin pale, almost transparent. Clothes hang like a sack. She really doesn't look 17. Her name is Jordan Turpin. She points to the house at the end of the street, the one with the swings in the yard. Everyone is there. Her parents don't know she ran away. The police ask how long she had been planning the escape. The answer, 2 years. She spent 2 years preparing for this call, memorizing the number, waiting for the moment. The officers approach the house. They knock on the door. A middle-aged woman opens, a smile on her face, friendly. This is Louise Turpin. The police explain the reason for the visit. A call was received. Louise is surprised. Everything is fine with them, an ordinary family. The officers ask to enter. Louise agrees. The first impression, the smell, stale air. The second, the darkness. The curtains are drawn tight. Louise leads them into the living room. Family photos on the walls. Many people, everyone smiling. Her husband appears, David Turpin. Tall, thin, wearing glasses, calm. He says their daughter misunderstood something. She fantasizes sometimes. The police ask to see the rest of the family members. David hesitates. Then he leads them down the hall. He opens the first door. An officer glances inside and freezes. 2 people are on the bed, emaciated to the limit. Skin and bones, bruises and marks on their wrists. On the floor by the bed, a metal chain. One end is attached to the frame. The officer calls for backup. David is handcuffed. Louise is detained in the living room. The next half hour is chaos. More cars arrive, an ambulance, social services. Officers go through the whole house, room by room. In each, people, chained. Some cannot stand up. Some do not react to voices. In total, they find 12 people, plus Jordan outside, 13. Aged from 2 to 29 years. All are brothers and sisters. The police begin to free them. Medics record the condition of each. Critical emaciation, dehydration, signs of long-term physical restraint. David and Louise are taken to the station. The charge, holding people against their will. This is only the first wording. There will be more later. Jordan sits in the patrol car, wrapped in a blanket. She watches as her brothers and sisters are led out of the house. An officer approaches, asks how she is. Jordan smiles for the first time. Now everything will be fine. The policeman nods, although he doesn't yet understand the scale of what they discovered. The investigation is just beginning. Ahead are questions. How could this happen for years in an ordinary neighborhood? Why no one noticed? And most importantly, what exactly was happening behind that door all those years? Investigators start with a basic check. Who were David and Louise Turpin? The first thing they find is Louise's Facebook page. They open it. What they see does not correspond to what was in the house. Dozens of family photos, all 13 in the frame, parents in the center. Around them, their sons and daughters. Everyone is smiling. The clothes are the same on everyone. The girls in the same dresses. The boys in the same shirts. The colors match. The hair is the same length, like a uniform. The investigators scroll further. A trip to Disneyland. The whole family in front of the castle. Everyone in branded ears. Smiles. Another photo, Las Vegas. The whole family against the background of a casino. Caption, family vacation. A series of shots from a ceremony. David and Louise before the altar. She is in a wedding dress. He is in a suit. Around them, all 13 in formal wear. Caption, renewal of our vows, 25 years together. This was in one of the wedding chapels on the Strip. A full ceremony, with flowers and a photographer. The last post was 3 months ago. Regular updates, regular family outings. At least that's how it looks. Detectives request surveillance camera footage. They find videos from shopping centers and parks. In the recordings, the same picture. The family moves in a group, parents in front, the rest behind, in a row, an organized column. Smiles on their faces, but if you look closely, they are forced, like on command. One more detail. In Disneyland, the family is photographed only at the entrance. In front of the castle, next to the characters, but they almost never go inside the park. They are not seen on the rides. The same in Vegas. A photo against the background of the casino, the ceremony, but inside the hotels, cameras do not spot them. Detectives interview neighbors. The first neighbor, an elderly woman 2 houses away. She saw the Turpin family rarely. Sometimes she noticed them coming out at night, walking in the yard, always late in the evening or early in the morning. During the day, almost never. The second neighbor, across the street, confirms. The family was reclusive. They didn't socialize. They went out into the yard rarely, mostly at night. A third neighbor says she tried to say hello to Louise. She answered politely but briefly. Once she saw a group of teenagers in identical clothes come out into the yard. They stood silently for 10 minutes. Then they went back into the house. Not a single neighbor remembers anyone from the family at school, in the playgrounds, in the stores. Detectives check school records. None of the 13 are registered anywhere. They find homeschooling documents, filed by David. All are homeschooled, formally legal, no inspections required. Medical records, a few visits to a pediatrician more than 10 years ago. After that, nothing. No vaccinations, no checkups. David worked as an engineer at Northrop Grumman, a stable salary. Louise, a housewife. Bank statements show spending on groceries, but the amounts are small. Too small for 15 people. Purchases made at night, in 24-hour stores. David bought them, alone. Receipts show bread, peanut butter, crackers, canned goods, nothing fresh. Social services check archives. They find one record. A few years ago, an anonymous call. Someone saw emaciated teenagers in the yard. A worker went out. Louise opened the door, invited him inside. The house was clean. He spoke with family members. Everyone was polite. No signs of problems found. Case closed. Detectives look at the Facebook photos, then at the medical reports of those who were let out of the house. 2 different worlds. In the photos, a happy family. In reality, 13 emaciated people in chains. The question remains, how long did this go on, and what exactly was happening behind the closed door? While David and Louise are taken to the station, detectives begin a detailed inspection of the house on Muirwoods Road. The first thing they record is the smell. It's everywhere. Stale air mixed with the smell of sewage and something musty, as if the house hadn't been ventilated for years. The curtains are drawn in all the rooms, thick. They don't let light through. Only the dim light of a few lamps is on. The house is dark even during the day. Investigators go down the hall. They open the first bedroom on the right. The room is small, 2 beds. On each, 1 person. Both are chained to the bed frames. The chains are short. It's impossible to reach the door or the window. On the floor, plastic bottles, empty. Nearby, cracker wrappers. A few books, children's, old, tattered. The mattresses are dirty. There is almost no bed linen. What is there, old, torn. Investigators move to the next room. The picture is the same. 2 beds, Chains. The same plastic bottles. The same wrappers. Third room. Fourth. Everywhere is the same. Detectives count 6 bedrooms in total. In each, 2 or 3 people chained. In one room, only one. Investigators photograph every meter. They record the location of the chains. They measure their length. On average, a meter, maybe a bit more. Enough to reach the edge of the bed, no more. In one of the rooms, they find a diary, written in children's handwriting. The entries are short. The dates go with breaks of several months. The last entry, 6 months ago. Investigators read. The text is simple. Today, Mom gave us bread. I was good. The next entry, Dad said we are bad. We haven't eaten for 2 days. Detectives move to the kitchen. The refrigerator is almost empty. A few bottles of water, a pack of cheese, a container with leftover food. That's it. The cabinets are also empty. A few boxes of crackers, jars of peanut butter, canned goods, nothing fresh. The trash can is full. Fast food wrappers, empty pizza boxes, soda cans, fresh, yesterday's. Investigators correlate. In the refrigerator, almost nothing. In the trash, leftover food for 2. David and Louise ate normally. The others did not.
In the living room, they find toys. New. In packaging. Dolls. Cars. Construction sets. All unopened. Sitting on shelves, like in a store. On the walls, those same photos. Family shots. Disneyland. Las Vegas. Vow renewal ceremony. Everyone is smiling. Investigators take several photos off the wall. They take them to the medics who are examining the liberated. They ask them to match the faces in the pictures with those who were let out of the house. The medics compare. In the photographs, the people look thin, but not critically so. Now, the same faces, but emaciated to the limit. The difference, a few months. During this time, the weight dropped catastrophically. Detectives return to the inspection. In the bathroom, they find 1 toothbrush. 1 for 15 people. There is almost no soap. 1 bottle of shampoo, half empty. 2 towels, old. In the parents' bedroom, the opposite picture. The bed is large, clean. The closet is full of clothes, a TV, a computer. The air conditioner is working. On the nightstand, documents. Investigators look through them. Birth certificates for all 13. Medical records, old. The last entries, 10 years old. They also find checkbooks, expenditure records. David kept accounts, neat, by dates. Spending on food, minimal, but regular payments for the internet, cable television, subscriptions to streaming services. Detectives go out into the yard. That same playground, swings, a slide. Everything is new, but there are no signs of use. The paint is not worn. The swing chains are not scuffed. A decoration, for photos, for the neighbors, to make it look right. Investigators return to the medics. They ask about the condition of those freed. Doctors say critical emaciation in all. The oldest is 29 years old, weighs less than 40 kilograms. The youngest is 2 years old. Weight corresponds to a 6-month-old. Cognitive development is impaired in most. Vocabulary is limited. Motor coordination is weak. Muscles are atrophied from lack of movement. In several, signs of old fractures that healed incorrectly. No one received medical help. Teeth are in terrible condition, cavities in all. In some, the teeth are rotting. No one had seen a dentist. Detectives begin careful interviews. Medics are nearby, psychologists too. The questions are simple. What is your name? How old are you? How do you feel? The answers are short, quiet. Some don't answer at all. They just look. One of the older girls, she is 25, says she doesn't remember the last time she left the house, maybe several years ago. She doesn't know for sure. Another says they were let out only for photos. They were specially dressed, taken somewhere, photographed, then brought back, put on chains again. Investigators realize the scale of what happened is only beginning to become clear. At the station, David and Louise are taken to different rooms. Standard procedure. Interrogated separately. The detective starts with David.
Sits him in the interrogation room, turns on the recording, states the date, time, name of the suspect. David sits calmly, hands on the table, facial expression neutral, as if he was called to a routine meeting. The detective asks the first question. Explain what was happening in your house. David answers slowly, chooses his words, says they have a large family, 13 people. It's difficult. Discipline is needed. The detective clarifies. What kind of discipline exactly? David explains. A regime, a schedule, rules. Everyone must follow the rules. Question. Why were they chained? David pauses, then says, they tried to run away. It's for their safety, so they wouldn't leave at night, so they wouldn't get lost. The detective looks at him, writes it down, asks further, why are they so emaciated? David answers, they have problems with appetite. They don't want to eat. He and Louise tried to feed them, but they refuse. They are being capricious. The detective shows photos from the refrigerator, almost empty. David explains, there was food. It just ran out. He was going shopping. He didn't have time. The next question, medical help. When was the last time they saw a doctor? David says, long ago, a few years. They are healthy. They weren't sick. There was no need. The detective pulls out receipts from the trash can. Fast food, pizza, fresh, yesterday's. Asks, who was this for? David hesitates, then answers, for him and Louise. The others ate something else, ordinary food, healthy.
What exactly? David lists. Bread, peanut butter, crackers. Healthy eating, no excesses. The detective writes down every word, then asks, why is it dark in the house? Why are the curtains drawn? David explains, they don't like bright light. They are more comfortable that way. Question about school. Where do the rest of the family members study? David says, homeschooling. He and Louise teach themselves, according to the program. What program? David describes basic subjects, reading, writing, math, everything necessary. The detective clarifies, did they show the results of the training to anyone? Did they take tests? David answers, no, not required. The law allows homeschooling without inspections. Next question, the chains. How long were they chained? David thinks, says, it varied, sometimes during the day, sometimes at night. It depended on behavior. On what behavior? David explains, if they didn't listen, if they broke the rules, then punishment, temporary, a few hours, maybe a day. The detective shows photos of the marks on the wrists, old, deep. This is not a few hours. David is silent, then says, maybe longer. He doesn't remember exactly. In the next room, Louise is being interrogated. Another detective. The same questions. Louise answers almost the same way. The words are similar. The explanations identical, as if memorized. A large family. Discipline is needed. A regime. Rules. They didn't want to eat. They have appetite problems. Homeschooling. For safety.
The detective asks, what were they afraid of? Why are chains needed for safety? Louise explains, the neighborhood is dangerous. They could go out and get lost, or someone could take them. Question. Neighbors say the neighborhood is quiet. There is almost no crime. Louise insists, it's still dangerous. Better to be safe. The detective clarifies, why were they let out only at night? Louise says, it's hot during the day. It's cooler at night. Better for health. Next question. Photos on social media. Trips. Disneyland. Vegas. How does this fit with the fact that they were afraid to let them out of the house? Louise explains, these are special cases, family events, under supervision, safe. The detective shows surveillance footage. In the park, the family stands in a tight group. They don't disperse, as if on command. Louise says, it's more convenient that way, so no one gets lost. Question about the toys. New, unopened. Why buy them if you don't let them play? Louise answers, it's for special cases. If they behave well, they earn it. Did anyone earn it? Louise thinks, says, no, not yet, but they could, if they tried. The detective writes it down, asks, how old is the oldest? Louise answers, 29. Question, why should a person at 29 have to earn the right to play with a toy? Louise is silent, then says, he also has problems, didn't develop normally, mentally remained at a younger age. Why didn't he develop? Louise explains, genetics, or something else.
She doesn't know exactly. They didn't take him to doctors. There was no need. The detectives finish the interrogations. They compare the testimonies. David and Louise tell almost the same story, but the version doesn't match the facts. Medical reports show emaciation from prolonged starvation, muscle atrophy from immobility,
cognitive impairments from lack of education and socialization. The detectives understand the parents are lying. Every explanation is an attempt to justify what cannot be justified. Investigators pull up recordings from the body cameras of the officers who first entered the house. They review all the material from the beginning. The moment Louise opens the door, her face is calm, even friendly, a smile, as if neighbors came to her for salt. The officer explains the reason for the visit. A call for a welfare check was received. Louise raises her eyebrows in surprise. What call? Everything is fine with them. Her voice is steady. No tension, no panic. A regular conversation. The officer asks to enter. Louise hesitates for a couple of seconds. Then she steps back. She invites them with a gesture. Come in. The camera records her movements. She goes ahead, leisurely, shows the living room, sits on the couch, folds her hands on her knees. David appears, also calm. His voice is low, polite, greets them, asks what's the matter. The officer repeats, information was received about a possible problem in the house. Need to check. David nods, understandingly.
Of course, check. We have no secrets. Investigators pay attention. Not one of them asks who called, not interested in the details, does not try to find out what exactly was reported. They simply agree to the check. This is strange. Usually people in such a situation ask questions. Who called? What did they say? Why did the police come at all? David and Louise don't ask anything. The officer asks, how many people are in the house? Louise answers 15, our large family, 13 sons and daughters. She says this with pride, like an achievement, a large family. The officer clarifies, where are the others? David says, in the rooms, resting. They lead a nocturnal lifestyle. They sleep during the day. They are awake at night. The officer asks again, why nocturnal? David shrugs. It's more convenient. It's hot during the day. It's cooler at night. Plus he works. The noise doesn't bother them. Louise nods, confirms. Yes, they are used to it. It's calmer at night. The officer asks to show the rooms. David gets up, slowly, without haste, leads them down the hallway. The camera records every step. David stops at the first door, turns to the officer, warns they might be sleeping, no need to scare them. Opens the door. The officer looks in, sees 2 on beds, chains, emaciation. The camera records David's reaction, none. He stands calmly, as if showing an ordinary bedroom. The officer asks, why are they chained? David answers without a pause, for safety. They tried to leave.
This is a temporary measure. His voice remains steady. He explains as if it's a matter of course, as if it's normal. The officer calls for backup. David watches, doesn't protest, doesn't try to stop it, just stands there. Louise in the living room is also calm. When the second officer approaches her, she looks up, smiles slightly. Did something happen? The officer says, you are being detained. Louise nods. Okay, as if she agreed to an offer of tea. They turn her around, put on handcuffs. She doesn't resist, doesn't scream, doesn't cry, stands quietly. David is also cuffed, the same reaction, calmness, submission, no emotions. Investigators re-watch the recording several times. They analyze it. Usually in such situations, people react. Even innocent people are nervous, ask questions, are indignant, demand a lawyer. David and Louise, no. They behave as if they were invited to a formal procedure, calm, restrained, almost indifferent. The psychologist who was brought into the case watches the recording, gives an assessment. Behavior does not match the norm. Such calmness during an arrest can indicate several things. First, a complete lack of awareness of guilt. They don't think they did anything bad. Second, disassociation, turning off emotions as a defense mechanism. Third, psychopathy, inability to react emotionally in a normal way. The investigators make notes. The behavior of the suspect becomes part of the case. This is not just an oddity.
This is proof of what happened for years. Normal parents in such a situation would defend themselves, explain, justify themselves emotionally. David and Louise, no. They explain rationally, coldly, like an instruction manual. Detectives understand they are not dealing with ordinary criminals. These are people who built a system, lived with it for years, thought it was right. Interrogations at the station only confirm this. Every answer is measured, calm, logical, by their logic. Investigators prepare charges. The list grows by the hour. Holding people against their will, cruel treatment, torture, deprivation of food, deprivation of medical help. David and Louise remain in their cells. They behave quietly, don't complain, don't demand to see a lawyer immediately. They wait. And meanwhile,
The investigators begin the most difficult part of the work, finding out exactly how it all began and why it continued for so long. The next stage, interviews with the liberated. Psychologists and detectives work together, carefully. The questions are simple, without pressure. They start with the elders, with those who can speak coherently. The first is Jordan, the one who called 911. She is placed in a separate room, comfortable, given food, water. She eats slowly, in small pieces. Her stomach is not used to normal portions. The psychologist asks, "Can you tell how it all began?" Jordan thinks, then begins to speak. She remembers that it used to be different.
When she was very little, the family lived in a different place, in Texas. It was better there. They were let out into the yard, sometimes even to the neighbors. Then they moved to California, first to one house, then to another, and with each move it got worse. The rules became more numerous, the restrictions more, the punishments more. Jordan says, first they were just locked in rooms for a few hours, if they didn't listen, if they talked too loudly, if they laughed. Then the locks on the doors became permanent. You could only go out with permission, to the bathroom, or when the parents called. Then the chains appeared, first for the night, then for the whole day, then constantly. The psychologist writes it down, asks, when did this happen? Jordan doesn't remember exactly. A few years ago, maybe 5, maybe more. Time for them went differently. Days merged, weeks, months. Nothing changed. Every day the same. The next interview with her older brother. He is 22 years old. His name is Joshua. Joshua speaks more quietly, takes longer to choose his words. Speech is simple, but he tries to explain. He tells about the food. Before they were fed 3 times a day, then 2, then 1, then every other day. Portions became smaller. First a regular plate, then half a plate, then a few spoons. If someone complained, punishment, a day without food, 2 days, 3. Joshua says they learned not to complain, to be silent, to eat what they were given, to give thanks.
The psychologist asks, why didn't they ask for help? Joshua explains, they were warned. If someone tells outsiders, everyone will be separated, sent to different places, will never see each other again. This was the main threat, losing the family. They feared this more than hunger. The next one, their sister. She is 25. Her name is Jennifer. Jennifer tells about the punishments. For any violation of the rules, talking without permission, punishment. Getting out of bed at the wrong time, punishment. Not finishing food, punishment. Punishments were different. Sometimes the chain was tightened, so you couldn't lie down. You had to sit or stand, for hours, for days. Sometimes the pillow was taken away, or the blanket, left on a bare mattress. Sometimes they stopped talking, completely. Brought food in silence, left in silence. Didn't answer questions, for weeks. Jennifer says, this was the worst thing. Silence. The feeling that you don't exist. The psychologist takes a break, lets her rest, then continues. Next question, about education. Jennifer tells them. The parents gave them textbooks, old ones. Sometimes told them to read, sometimes checked. But there was no system, no schedule, no lessons, just books. Read it yourself. She learned to read, basic, to write too, to count, but no more. No other subjects, no history, no geography, no science. Her younger brothers and sisters know even less. Some barely know how to write. Some don't know the months of the year.
Don't know who the president is. Don't know what year it is now. Psychologists interview the younger ones. It's more difficult with them. They are afraid. They answer in monosyllables, or they are silent altogether. One of the younger girls, she is 12, says she doesn't remember life without chains. For her, this is the norm. It has always been this way. Another, older, tells about those rare outings, for photos. The parents dressed them in clean clothes, combed their hair, took them to Disneyland or Vegas. They said, smile, behave well, don't talk to strangers. Otherwise we'll go home and there will be punishment. They smiled, stood in silence, took photos, then returned. The clothes were taken away. They were put on chains again.
These outings occurred once every few months, maybe once a year, specifically for photos. Psychologists collect the testimony of all 13, put together a picture. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't the result of a breakdown or illness. It was a system, built over years, with rules, with punishments, with control over every minute. The detectives hand the materials to the prosecutor. He studies them, prepares the indictment. The list of charges takes up several pages. Each is backed by testimony, photos, medical reports. David and Louise are given a date for a preliminary hearing. The charges are read to them. Both listen calmly, do not react. Investigators realize a long process lies ahead. Each charge must be proven.
All evidence collected. Witnesses prepared. In the prison cells, David and Louise behave like model prisoners. Quiet, obedient, don't create problems. The guards note they don't ask questions. Most of those arrested immediately are interested. What will happen next? When is the trial? What sentence is threatened? Is it possible to contact the family? David and Louise are silent. They eat what they are given. They sleep on schedule. They fulfill all requirements, like robots. 2 days later, they are assigned lawyers, public defenders. Standard procedure. David's lawyer comes to the first meeting, introduces himself, explains his role, starts asking questions about the case. David answers calmly, without emotion, tells the same version he told the detectives. A large family, discipline, safety, temporary measures. The lawyer tries to find out, does he understand the seriousness of the charges? David nods. He understands. He is accused of crimes, but he doesn't agree with the wording. Which ones exactly? David explains. He didn't torture. He raised them. These are different things. The lawyer makes notes, asks, does David worry about the condition of his sons and daughters, where they are now, how they are? David thinks, then says, probably they were placed in shelters or in foster families. They should be fine. The lawyer clarifies, does he want to contact them, pass something on? David shakes his head. No need, not yet. Louise's lawyer holds a similar meeting.
Asks the same questions, receives similar answers. Louise doesn't ask about them either, isn't interested in their condition, doesn't ask to pass on words, nothing. The lawyers talk to each other, exchange impressions. Both note the same thing, a complete lack of concern for the fate of the liberated. This is strange. Even those parents who truly committed crimes against their own family usually show at least some concern. They ask, they worry, they try to justify themselves through care. David and Louise, no. For them, this topic as if doesn't exist. A psychiatrist is appointed to assess sanity, standard procedure in such cases, need to determine if they understood what they were doing. The psychiatrist talks to David, conducts tests, asks questions. David answers logically, coherently. Memory works, orientation in space and time is preserved. The psychiatrist asks, did he consider his actions correct? David answers yes, he did what he had to do, as a parent, as the head of the family. The psychiatrist clarifies, did he know that this could be considered a crime? David thinks, says he knew that others might not understand, but the understanding of others doesn't make the action wrong. The psychiatrist records it. Awareness is there. Understanding of the consequences is there. Sane. With Louise, the result is the same. She understands where she is, what happened, what charges are brought. Sane. But the emotional response, zero.
Complete emotional detachment from what is happening. The psychiatrist gives a conclusion. Both suspects demonstrate signs of a personality disorder, possibly of a narcissistic type, complete lack of empathy for the victims, distorted perception of reality regarding their actions, but legally sane, can stand trial. Meanwhile, the liberated are starting a new life. They are placed in protected institutions, separately from each other, as the protocol requires, but with the possibility to see each other. Medics continue treatment. The main task to restore weight. Gradually, the body is unaccustomed to normal food. A sudden increase in portions can be dangerous. Small portions every few hours, high calorie but light, a gradual increase in volume. Physical therapy. Muscles are atrophied. They need to learn to move normally, walk without pain, raise their arms above their heads. For some, this is the first time in years they can get out of bed and walk freely, without chains, without restrictions. Psychologists work in parallel, every day, carefully. They help them realize that what happened is not normal, that they didn't deserve it, that it was a crime. For many, this is a revelation. They have heard for years that they deserved punishment, that it was their own fault, that they should be grateful for a roof over their heads. Social workers begin teaching basic skills: how to use a phone, how to shop, how to talk to strangers.
Things that ordinary people know from childhood are new to them, unfamiliar. Investigators observe this process, record the progress. Every improvement, one more piece of evidence of how much they were restricted. The case moves to trial. The prosecutor prepares the materials, the defense lawyers too. A date for the first hearing is set. Investigators return to the house on Muirwoods Road for a repeated inspection, this time more thorough, searching for any documents, records, evidence. In one of the bedrooms they find a notebook, an ordinary school one, tattered, pages yellowed. They open it. The handwriting is children's, uneven, letters of different sizes, spelling mistakes in every word. The first entry is dated 2010, 8 years ago. Today Mom hit me. I took food without asking. I won't do it again. The next entry is a week later. Dad said we are bad. We were locked for 2 days. I am very hungry. The investigator scrolls further, page after page. The entries are short, simple sentences, but the content is monstrous. Today we were tied to the bed, said we must learn to obey. Mom didn't give water, said we didn't deserve. Dad hit Joshua. He cried. Mom said shut up. Entries come with breaks, sometimes several days in a row, sometimes a break for a month, sometimes longer. The investigator understands. She wrote when she could, when there were a pencil and a moment alone. 2012. Entries become rarer, but more detailed.
We are kept on a chain all the time now. I can't get up. My hands hurt. Sister is crying. She is 2 years old. She doesn't understand why we are here. Dad said if we tell someone, we will be separated forever. I am afraid. 2014. The handwriting almost doesn't change. Development stopped. I forgot what the sun looks like. We see it only when we go to take pictures. Mom said we are going to Disneyland. We were washed and dressed, said to smile, then returned and on chains again. I want to die, but I am afraid. The last entry is 2017, a few months before the liberation. I decided, I must run away. I must save them. I will wait for the moment. The investigator closes the notebook, hands it to a colleague. He reads it, is silent. This is not just evidence. This is a chronology, documented, from the first person, for years. Experts analyze the handwriting, confirm one person wrote it. By the age of the handwriting, a teenager, writing development is delayed, corresponds to limited education. Investigators correlate the entries with the testimony. It matches every detail, dates, events, descriptions of punishments. They find another notebook in another room. The handwriting is different, fewer entries, but the content is the same. Dad took my pillow, said I behaved badly. I don't remember what I did. Mom hasn't spoken to us for a week already, brings food and leaves, is silent. Detectives understand. This is systematic documentation of crimes.
Written by victims, in real time. Medical reports come in parallel, detailed, for each of the 13. The eldest, Joshua, is 29 years old, height 1.75 meters, weight 37 kilograms, body mass index is critically low, muscle atrophy, nerve damage on the wrists from long-term wearing of chains. Cognitive development at the level of 10 to 12 years. Vocabulary is limited. Basic reading and writing skills are there. Math at the level of elementary school. Jordan, 17 years old. Weight 40 kilograms. Condition a bit better. She was more active, planned the escape, moved more than the others. The younger ones are in worse condition. The youngest is 2 years old. Weight like a 6-month-old.
doesn't talk, doesn't walk. Physical development is stopped. Medics record common signs in all: chronic malnutrition, vitamin deficiency, anemia, bone deformation from improper development, cavities and rotting of teeth, skin diseases. In several, traces of old fractures, healed incorrectly. No one received help. Bones healed themselves, crookedly. Damage on the wrists and ankles in everyone who was chained, deep, long-standing, layers of scar tissue. Chains were worn for years. The prosecutor receives all the materials: medical reports, diaries, photos of the house, witness testimonies. He reviews the indictment, adds new points: systematic torture, intentional infliction of physical suffering.
Deprivation of liberty under aggravating circumstances. Every point is backed by evidence: medical, documentary, testimonial. The diaries become central evidence. They are handed over to experts for detailed analysis. Every entry, every date, every description of punishment. Experts compile a chronology, year after year, how the situation worsened, how control intensified, how cruelty grew. This is no longer a case of negligence, not of bad parenting. This is a case of deliberate, systematic torture spanning years. Experts from various fields are brought into the case: psychologists, psychiatrists, trauma specialists, financial analysts. The task is to understand not only what happened, but why. Psychologists work first. They conduct detailed assessments of all the liberated: tests, interviews, observations. The diagnosis for all 13: post-traumatic stress disorder, severe form, chronic. Symptoms are the same: nightmares, flashes of anxiety, inability to trust adults, panic attacks at the sight of closed doors or chains. In most, a delay in cognitive development, not because of genetics, because of complete isolation. The brain develops through interaction with the world. Without interaction, development stops. The elders were luckier. They remember the time before isolation. There are basic skills, memory of normal life. The younger ones know only this: chains, darkness, hunger. For them, this is the norm, the only reality they have seen.
Psychologists give a conclusion. Recovery is possible, but long. Years of therapy, maybe decades. Some consequences will remain forever. Psychologists work in parallel. They pull all the bank documents of David and Louise for the last 15 years. They find interesting details. The family received state aid, benefits for each of the 13, regular payments, significant amounts monthly. Analysts look at what the money was spent on. Most of it on entertainment for David and Louise. Trips to Vegas, tickets to Disneyland, hotel rooms, restaurants. A small part on products, but spending is minimal. Bread, crackers, canned goods, cheap food, in quantities insufficient for 15 people. More spending on toys, those same ones that stood unopened in the living room, bought regularly, but never used. Analysts conclude, money intended for the support of 13 people was spent on 2, systematically, for years. This is not poverty, not a lack of funds. This is a conscious choice. A criminal psychologist is brought into the case, a profiling specialist. His task is to understand the motivation of David and Louise. He studies all the materials: testimonies, records, behavior of the suspects, medical data. He compiles a psychological portrait. David, a classic controller, a pathological need for absolute power, inability to empathize, perception of other people as objects that can be managed. Louise, codependent, completely subordinate to her husband.
Fulfills his requirements without questions, has no will of her own, or it's suppressed so much that it's indistinguishable. Together, they created a closed system. David sets the rules, Louise fulfills them. The victims obey. Any deviation, punishment. The psychologist explains, this was not spontaneous abuse, not a breakdown, not the result of stress or illness. This is a built structure, with hierarchy,
with rules, with a system of punishments and rewards, with control of every aspect of life. David created an ideal world, by his rules, where he is the absolute authority, where no one can disobey, where his word is law. Isolation was necessary for the maintenance of this world. Any external contact could destroy the system. Therefore, the windows are closed, exits are forbidden, communication with outsiders is under a ban. Photos on social media, part of the facade, to show the world an ideal family, happy, large, successful, so that no one asks questions. The psychologist gives a conclusion: motive, total control, not sadism for the sake of sadism, control as an end in itself, power as the meaning of existence. Experts pass their conclusions to the prosecutor. He complements the indictment. Now there is not only a description of the crimes, there is an explanation of the motive, a psychological mechanism. The case becomes even more serious. This is not an impulsive crime, not a single case of cruelty. This is years of planning, building a system, maintaining control.
The defense lawyers receive the same materials, study them, understand. The evidence base is huge. Medical reports, witness testimonies, diaries, financial documents, expert assessments. It will be difficult to defend, almost impossible. Investigators move to the next stage. Need to find out, did anyone else know about what was happening? Were there accomplices or witnesses who were silent? They start with an expanded survey of neighbors, not only from Muir Woods Road. They check previous addresses where the family lived. David and Louise moved often. Every few years a new house. Texas, California, different cities. Detectives find former neighbors, interview each one. Texas, 2003. The family lived in the suburbs. A neighbor remembers them. A large family, much noise at first. Then it became quiet. She tells children played in the yard for the first time. Then they stopped. She asked Louise why. She answered they switched to homeschooling. The regime is strict, no time to play. The neighbor didn't suspect anything. Homeschooling is a common practice, a strict regime too. Many parents raise their children this way. California, 2010. Another house, other neighbors. A woman across the street remembers saw the family rarely, very rarely. Sometimes they went out into the yard at night, all together, stood in silence. She found it strange, but not enough to call the police. People have the right to oddities. Another neighbor recalls once saw a face in the window, pale.
Thin, looked at the street. He waved. The face disappeared. The curtain was drawn. He thought, maybe someone is sick, doesn't want contacts. It happens. Detectives interviewed David's colleagues at work, Northrop Grumman, engineering department. Colleagues describe him as quiet, reclusive, performed his work qualitatively, but in breaks he kept apart, didn't go to corporate events, talked little about his family. One colleague remembers a conversation. Asked David, "How are things at home?" He answered, "Good. A large family requires discipline, but we are managing." Didn't develop the topic further, closed up. Investigators pull up records from David's work computer, correspondence, search queries, nothing suspicious, work, technical documents, news sites. No traces of searching for information about control methods, or punishments, or isolation. David didn't look for instructions. He knew what to do, or made it up himself. Detectives search for relatives. David's parents died long ago. A sister lives in another state. Last saw him 10 years ago. She tells David was always strange since childhood, liked control, liked rules. When he married Louise, he became even more closed off. The sister tried to visit them several times. David refused, said, "Not the best time, the family is busy, maybe later." Later never came. Louise's parents also died. A brother lives in a neighboring county. Last contact with his sister 5 years ago, by phone. A short conversation.
He tried to meet, come for a visit. Louise refused. David doesn't like guests. The family prefers privacy. The brother asked about the nephews. Louise answered monosyllabically. Everything is fine. Studying at home. Healthy. Didn't give more details. Detectives checked church records. The family was listed in several churches, moved from one to another.
Nowhere stayed long. A priest of one of the churches remembers them. Came irregularly. All 15 people. Sat together. In silence. After the service they left immediately. Didn't communicate with the parishioners. He tried to talk. Offered help. David refused. Politely, but firmly. They have everything. Help is not needed. The priest did not insist. Many people prefer distance. This is their right. Investigators check medical institutions, outpatient clinics, hospitals. Last entries 10 years ago. After, nothing. Not a single doctor had seen these people for years. No one could notice signs of emaciation, physical injuries, because no one saw. Detectives interview social service workers. That very visit a few years ago, after an anonymous call. The worker defends himself, says he checked according to the protocol, inspected the house, spoke with family members. Everything looked normal, clean, well-kept. The detective asks, did he see the chains? The worker answers, no. He was not let into all the rooms, shown only part of the house. This is not a violation of the protocol. People have the right to privacy.
A full search requires a warrant. He didn't have a warrant. Investigators analyze all the information collected. The picture is clear. No one knew. More precisely, everyone saw parts, oddities, closedness, night walks, lack of contacts. But no one saw the whole. No one put the pieces together. Because each individual oddity is explainable. People have the right to be strange. There are no accomplices. There are no witnesses who knew and were silent either. Only those who saw the signs but did not understand their meaning. David and Louise built an ideal isolation, physical and social. Not one person from outside had access inside. Not one person from inside had access outside. Detectives close this line of the investigation. The focus returns to the main suspects, to their psychology, to the system they created and maintained for years in complete solitude from the world. Investigators delve into the past of David and Louise, need to understand when it all began, were there signs before, how ordinary people turned into this. David Allen Turpin was born in 1961, a small town in West Virginia, an ordinary family. Father worked at a factory, mother a housewife. School records show average student, grades not bad, behavior exemplary, few friends, kept to himself. Teachers describe him as quiet, reclusive, never broke the rules, but also didn't participate in activities, sat separately, observed. A classmate recalls, David liked chess, played alone, against himself. Set up the pieces, calculated the moves, for hours. After school, college, engineering direction, studied well. Technical subjects were easy, with people more difficult. Classmates almost don't remember him. He didn't go to parties, didn't participate in student life. Study and dormitory, nothing else. Louise was born in 1968, a small town in Tennessee, a religious family, strict. Father, a preacher in a local church. School records, obedient student, quiet, no problems, but also no achievements, a gray mouse. Teachers say always agreed, never argued, did what she was told, did not express her own opinion. There were no friends, kept to the side. At breaks she sat alone, read religious brochures. After school she didn't enter college, worked as a cashier in a local store, lived with her parents, rarely went anywhere except work and church. David and Louise met in 1984. He was 23, she was 16. Met through a church organization. David came for work in her city, went to a service, saw Louise. Acquaintances of that time recall, David immediately showed interest, actively courted. Louise was shy, he was persistent. A few months later they got married. Louise was 17, formally a legal age in that state, but the 7-year difference and her youth are a worrying sign. Louise's parents approved. David was a believer, worked as an engineer, stable income, a good option. The first years of marriage, according to the few acquaintances, looked normal.
Lived in Texas. David worked. Louise was a housewife. Sons and daughters appeared, one after another, fast, practically every year. An acquaintance of Louise's from the church recalls, After the third child appeared, she looked tired, but she never complained, smiled, said that God had blessed them with a large family. David controlled the finances completely. Louise did not have access to the accounts, did not make decisions about spending, ask permission for any purchase. This was noticed by the same acquaintance. Once she suggested to Louise to go shopping together. Louise answered, "Need to ask husband." Later she refused. David said that there was no need. After the fifth birth, the family moved. Another city. David found a new job. Contacts with previous acquaintances were cut off. 2 years later, another move, then another one, each time to a new place, each time further from previous connections. Investigators analyzed the pattern. Each move coincided with an increase in the family. The more people there were in the family, the more often they moved. This is a classic tactic of isolation. Cut off old connections, not let new ones form. Keep the family in a vacuum. Detectives find records from one of the schools in Texas. The elders were enrolled in a public school, went for the first few years. A teacher remembers them. Quiet, shy, clothes always the same, lunches brought from home, scanty, bread and something simple.
Once the teacher asked one of them why always the same clothes. He answered, "Dad said so." That's right. A year later, they were taken from school. David filed documents for homeschooling. Since then, none of the 13 had attended school. This was a turning point. The last connection with the outside world was broken. Further, only the family, only the house, only David's rules. Investigators collect the whole chronology, year by year, trace the escalation. 1984, acquaintance and marriage. David is older. Louise is young and dependent. 1985 to 2000, birth of 13, frequent moves, gradual isolation from society. 2001, transition to homeschooling, complete cessation of external contacts. 2003 to 2010, intensification of control, appearance of hard rules, restriction of food, prohibitions on leaving. 2010 to 2018, system of torture, chains, constant isolation, minimal nutrition, degradation of conditions to a critical level. It didn't happen suddenly. It developed over 25 years, step by step, from controlling finances to controlling life, from strictness to cruelty, from restrictions to torture. The psychologist studying the materials gives an assessment, a classic escalation of abusive relationships. David was originally a controller, Louise an obedient victim who became an accomplice. The system was built over years. Each step seemed a logical continuation of the previous one. At some point, the line was crossed, but exactly when is difficult to determine.
Investigators are preparing for the final interrogations. Now they have the full picture, from beginning to end, from acquaintance to arrest. Detectives organize repeated interrogations, this time with a full set of evidence: photos, medical reports, diaries, financial documents. David is brought into the interrogation room, sat down. In front of him are laid out photos from the house, chains, emaciation of people on beds, an empty refrigerator. The detective points to the pictures, says, "Explain this." David looks at the photos for a long time, then looks up, answers calmly. This was a necessity, discipline. They didn't understand any other language. Control was needed. The detective puts down a medical report. 37 kilograms, at a height of 1.75 meters, critical emaciation. How is this discipline?